Greetings. I'm Angela, a 31-year-old woman, and I'm married to Scott, who is currently serving in the Air Force. Scott has been away on deployment for quite some time now, and let me tell you, it comes with its own set of challenges. Air Force life isn't always about happy reunions and tearful goodbyes. It's about finding strength in those in-between moments. Now, Scott is a brave soul with a quiet determination that I truly admire. During one of our phone calls, he brought up something unexpected. He suggested that I should work on improving my relationship with his mom, Kimberly, who has been feeling lonely since his dad passed away. I was a bit puzzled and asked him what he meant. He explained that he noticed both Kimberly and I could use more companionship during his deployment. He thought it might be a good idea for us to spend more time together. I hesitated because frankly things have been a bit strained between Scott and his mom ever since the infamous wedding incident. It all traces back to my wedding day, where the stress of planning, coordinating, and trying to keep my composure reached its peak. Kimberly, my mother-in-law, has a knack for pushing my buttons, and she certainly did that day. Let me share a bit of the backstory. As I was getting ready for the big day, Kimberly, with a devious grin, accidentally spilled red wine on my pristine white wedding dress. Red wine on a white dress. It felt like a nightmare unfolding in slow motion. This incident has added to the tension between us, and it seems like it's time to address it and find a way to reconnect. Naturally, she insisted it was an accidental blunder, attributing it to her supposedly buttery fingers as her little one matured. However, my intuition told me otherwise. The sparkle in her eyes confessed the truth. She orchestrated it deliberately. From that point onward, our connection took a steep downturn. It felt as though a layer of trust had been meticulously peeled away, exposing the simmering tension beneath the surface. Every subsequent interaction was infused with veiled sarcasm and passive-aggressive remarks. What was once a friendly exchange morphed into a battlefield of snide comments, becoming utterly draining. I naturally distanced myself from the tumult. I had no interest in becoming entangled in a dispute, yet my affection for Scott and the pain in his voice compelled me to relent. How could I not feel sympathy for someone who endured such hardships during his service? Thus, begrudgingly, I decided to give it a shot. Years had passed, and I hoped Kimberly had undergone some personal growth. It wasn't easy, especially considering the tumultuous history between us. But for Scott and the commitment we shared, I thought it was worth a try. I owed him at least that much for the sacrifices he made during his arduous service, enduring rigorous training and countless sleepless nights. After a heartfelt conversation with Scott about reconnecting with his mother, I summoned the courage to reach out to Kimberly. I knew it wouldn't be a walk in the park given our complicated history, but I was determined to make an effort for the well-being of my husband and the overall harmony within our family. It turned out to be a colossal mistake. Kimberly's response was just as passive-aggressive as I had feared. Reluctantly, she confessed that Scott had given her a stern talking to regarding her treatment of me. She pledged to make an effort to tolerate me more, though the emphasis she placed on the word try made it clear that it wouldn't be a seamless journey. Consequently, we started spending more time together. The initial phase was rocky, with tension so palpable it could be sliced with a knife. However, gradually, we discovered some common ground, bonding over shared family stories and experiences. Things were relatively decent, at least for a while. Yet the old Kimberly resurfaced, introducing those subtle jabs and digs that only I seemed to detect. It was reminiscent of high school mean girls pathetic, as if she couldn't resist herself. It drove me to the brink of insanity, and as months passed, the frustration intensified. I grew weary of being the nice girl, putting in so much effort to make things work. I had had enough of the artificial smiles and superficial conversations. It was time to address the elephant in the room, no matter how uncomfortable. One day, mustering my courage, I decided to confront Kimberly about her behavior. We were at her place, sipping on tea that seemed more bitter than usual. As I searched for the right words, my heart raced. Finally, I blurted it out. Kimberly, I can't ignore the tension between us. Despite our progress, these little jabs and digs are taking a toll on me. Kimberly gazed at me with practiced innocence, but this time I wasn't falling for it. Oh my, I'm uncertain about your intentions. Inhaling deeply, my irritation transformed into resolve. You grasp the essence of my thoughts, and truthfully, I'm weary of maintaining a facade. If we are to navigate through this, a sincere dialogue is imperative. At that juncture, chaos erupted. Our exchange evolved into a vehement disagreement, each uttered word more incendiary than the preceding one. Our voices elevated, and I sensed the tension constricting the air, stifling me. Honestly, I half expected my intrusive neighbor to summon the authorities, presuming a domestic dispute was unfolding. As the clamor persisted, the profound roots of resentment became apparent. It surpassed the triviality of spilled wine on my wedding gown. It delved into years of misconceptions, miscommunications, and a reservoir of suppressed anger. In that moment, I acknowledged the irrevocable nature of our situation. The disagreement abated eventually, leaving the space burdened with the gravity of our exchanged words. Departing Kimberly's place that day, I felt depleted yet curiously emancipated. We had unburdened ourselves, and though not the most graceful exchange, it was undeniably authentic. A fusion of emotions enveloped me in the aftermath: relief, sorrow, and an odd sense of clarity. It dawned on me that certain wounds ran too deep for superficial remedies like tea sessions and polite conversations. Post the intense altercation with Kimberly, I found myself seated in my living room, the residue of our encounter lingering heavily. Fed up and exhausted from the perpetual tension and squabbling, the walls of the spacious house seemed to close in, suffocating me with unresolved issues and memories. Days passed, and an overwhelming sense of loneliness permeated every corner of our rented home. Scott remained on deployment, miles away, leaving the house emptier than ever. It served as a stark realization of the void left by his absence and the vast distance that separated us. Following a heated disagreement with my mother-in-law, an overwhelming sense of loneliness engulfed me. I grew weary of either being too distant from my loved ones or uncomfortably close to those I'd rather avoid. The notion of relocating began to germinate in my mind. Downsizing to a more modest space felt like a breath of fresh air, not solely driven by the desire to save money, although that was undoubtedly a bonus. It was about crafting a sanctuary that felt more manageable, cozier, and most importantly, liberated from Kimberly's constant drama. During one of our video calls, I broached the subject with Scott. Surprisingly, he embraced the idea. I tactfully omitted the conflict with Kimberly, emphasizing the potential financial relief. Yet Scott, in his perceptive way, posed the question I had evaded. "Hey babe, a part of me wonders if this has something to do with a certain someone. Did you and my mom clash again? Is she a factor in wanting to move?" I sighed, a mix of frustration and relief surfacing. "Yes, it's partly about her. I've tried, Scott, really, but she's so abrasive. Every conversation feels like a battle, and I've reached my limit." Scott nodded sympathetically through the screen. "I understand, Angela. You've done your best to bridge that gap. But if it's causing you this much stress, maybe it's time to prioritize your well-being. I don't know why my mom dislikes you so much, and I'll do what I can from here. I love you and want to support you in the best way possible. If moving out is what it takes, then so be it." And there it stood, his steadfast support and comprehension, just as I had grown accustomed to anticipating from him. It wasn't about evading the problem, but discovering a resolution that allowed both of us to breathe a little easier. His words reassured me that it was acceptable to prioritize myself and seek a healthier environment where I could thrive without perpetually being on edge. As our conversation progressed, I felt a renewed sense of determination. Relocating wouldn't solve all our issues, but it would be a stride toward reclaiming my peace of mind. With Scott by my side, even though miles away, I felt empowered to make decisions leading to a more positive and fulfilling future. So, as I surveyed our living room, I envisioned starting anew in a cozier space devoid of the ghosts of unresolved conflicts. I was prepared to take that step, creating a space where Scott and I could find solace in each other's company, without the constant weight of negativity that had plagued our relationship with Kimberly. Fast-forwarding about 5 months, I was settled into this fantastic apartment, a real game changer. Escaping that old place with its bad vibes was incredibly liberating. My 21st birthday was on the horizon, and I was excited. It would be my first time celebrating in my new digs, and I was determined to make it awesome. Typically, I'd leave my home the night before the party, allowing friends and family to surprise me by decking out the place. However, this year called for something different. A grand party in such a tiny apartment wasn't feasible. My friends were there, and we kicked off the celebration before our early flight the next day. We had a pre-trip hangout, crashed at my place, and then jetted off together. The living room buzzed with laughter and chatter as we geared up for the adventure. But as life goes, things can't remain unchanged forever. Amidst all the excitement, my phone buzzed with a text from Kimberly. Curious, I checked it out. "Call me now, something important to talk about." It was quick and to the point, but the urgency in it left me wondering what was up. I slipped away from the crew, heading to my bedroom to make the call. My heart raced a bit, pondering what could be so urgent. "Hello, Kimberly, what's going on?" I've had my share of your absurdity, Angela. What in the world is bothering you? Pardon me, you heard me right. What's the source of your issue? Why are you attempting to alienate my son from me? Well, it seems you're disturbed because I revealed the truth to him. What truth? Kimberly, you're unreasonable. I can't spare the time to deal with you. All right, I'm tired of your resentment. I don't mind that you're an unhappy person. Just let me be and allow me to relish my birthday weekend. On that note, I wanted to share something with you. Your birthday won't be as enjoyable year. Consider this a heads up and you should be thanking me. What on earth are you talking about? Well, after not receiving an invitation year, I felt a bit bitter. So, I decided to contribute in my own way. I broke into your residence and created chaos. Decorations, furniture, everything. Come to think of it, I actually did you a favor because your friends did a terrible job decorating year. Honestly, it looked like a completely different person was living in that house. I took a moment of silence, almost hearing Kimberly's satisfaction on the phone before she said, "Oh, it seems like I did my job and surprised the birthday girl. Happy birthday, Angela. I hope you have a great time." I erupted in laughter, and Kimberly appeared visibly annoyed. "What's amusing? Why the laughter? This is no time for joy. Tears would be more appropriate." "Oh, Kimberly, you naive soul. Pardon me. You believe you're quite astute, don't you? Let me express one thing. You genuinely caught me off guard, no doubt about it. I never expected such cruelty from you, but you've made a significant error, my dear." "Oh, really, and what might that be? This isn't my residence. Have you perhaps lost your senses?" "No, but you will once you grasp whose home you've invaded and defaced." So I disclosed the details to Kimberly regarding my move around 5 months ago. It seemed quite unexpected for her to learn that I had decided to pack up and bid farewell to the old house. The history of the old house was now replaced by a new sheriff, none other than Sheriff Jonathan, who recently arrived in town. He had secured the house and was planning to move in with his family. Having met him a couple of times, I could already sense that he was a genuinely nice guy, focused on getting everything in order before his family's arrival. As I narrated all of this to Kimberly, I could feel her mood shifting. She started to panic, and I understood why. Kimberly had just realized that she had seriously crossed the line. Vandalizing a regular home was one thing, but taking on the new sheriff's residence was an entirely different level of audacity. I heard her shiver on the other end of the line, and it became clear that she was beginning to grasp the gravity of her actions. The panic in her voice was palpable as she exclaimed, "Oh my God, Angela, what have I done?" I let out a chuckle, though it wasn't a happy one. "Well, Kimberly, you chose to mess with the sheriff's home. You're on your own with this one." She began to cry and panic, pleading with me to help her fix the situation. Not once did she apologize for attempting to vandalize my home. What a piece of work. She wanted me to reach out to the sheriff and concoct a story about it being a big misunderstanding. Seriously, this was just too absurd. Kimberly was facing the repercussions of her actions, and I had no intention of coming to her rescue. Suppressing a chuckle, I listened to her tearful confessions over the phone, claiming her life was in ruins. I couldn't muster any sympathy. She had been playing these games for years, and now the consequences were catching up with her. It felt like a poetic justice of sorts, but when she pleaded for help, I simply shook my head. "Sorry, Kimberly, but this mess is of your own making, and you need to find your way out. I won't be involved." I must admit, though, you've given me the best birthday present by freeing me from your drama. Ending the call, I sighed with relief. Finally, I was liberated from Kimberly and her constant negativity. It was time to forge ahead and embrace a life without her dragging me down. Surveying my comfortable new apartment, I was confident that leaving the old place behind was the right decision. The next day marked the beginning of my vacation with friends, and we were geared up for fun and adventure. Determined to distance myself from Kimberly's chaos, I looked forward to leaving it all behind. Embarking on our journey, I consciously disregarded all attempts from her to reach me. I had made a resolute decision to cut ties with her and escape the toxicity she brought into my life. During our break, I connected with my husband, Scott, revealing every detail of Kimberly's troublesome behavior. Naturally, he was dismayed by his mother's absurd actions. It seemed she had crossed a boundary, and he took comfort in the realization that she was facing the consequences of her own deeds. As we relished our vacation, messages from acquaintances in our hometown flooded in, unraveling the unfolding drama of Kimberly's misadventures that culminated in her incarceration. The irony didn't escape anyone. She now resided in a jail cell without anyone to come to her aid. It seemed as though the universe was administering a fitting dose of karma. Discovering Kimberly's predicament filled me with a sense of gratification. Her reckless behavior, fueled by the belief in her immunity to consequences, had finally caught up with her. Now she grappled with the consequences solo, having severed ties and distanced herself from potential supporters. While I soaked in the sunshine alongside my companions, Kimberly endured solitary confinement with no support. A weight lifted from my shoulders as I realized I had emancipated myself from her harmful influence. I resolved not to allow her manipulative tactics and hurtful deeds to hinder me any further. As my holiday came to an end, I headed home with a sense of renewal and freedom. The chapter involving Kimberly was definitively sealed, and I enthusiastically looked forward to progressing without her, embracing a life filled with positivity and fulfillment. The feeling of freedom sprang forth as I took charge of my own joy, shedding the lingering negativity that had restrained me for an extended period. As time advanced, I dedicated myself to cultivating constructive connections with individuals who authentically valued my well-being. Scott and I, more resilient than before, stood together in our pledge to construct a joyful and thriving life. As for Kimberly, she had faced the consequences of her actions, a valuable lesson not destined to fade easily from memory.